if the talking heads, the pundits, the companies want to say that if we strike, it can wreck the economy. It's not that we're going to wreck the economy. We're going to wreck their economy, the economy that only works for the billionaire class. It doesn't work for the working class.
Hear that, analysts? All right, UAW President Shawn Fain.
Nearly 150,000 auto workers could go on strike as the auto worker union members essentially continue attempting to negotiate in good faith for a new worker contract. The negotiations, though, with the big three car companies have been failing so far. And as we approach the Thursday deadline for a new contract agreement, UAW President Shawn Fain countered the repeated fear-mongering from the corporate press about an auto strike damaging the economy. Here's a little more from Fain.
Analysts say a prolonged strike will push up auto prices and dramatically hurt the economy. Are you worried about either of those possibilities?
It's amazing to me how analysts, when workers ask for their fair share, it's always the end of the world. And no one, the last 4 years in general, okay, in the last decade, these companies made $250 billion in profit. In the last 6 months alone, they made $21 billion in profit. In the last 4 years, the price of cars went up 30%. CEO pay went up 40%. No one said a word. No one had any complaints about that. But now, God forbid that workers actually ask for their fair share of equity in the fruits of the labor and the product they produce, and all of a sudden it's the end of the world. So, if the talking heads, the pundits, the companies want to say that, if we strike, it can wreck the economy. It's not that we're going to wreck the economy. We're going to wreck their economy, the economy that only works for the billionaire class. It doesn't work for the working class.
He makes a really great point there, because I think we've all noticed that the price of vehicles has gone up significantly. And oftentimes what these corporations will point to is their labor force, and they'll blame the higher wages on what's leading to the higher prices of the products that we buy, in this case of the vehicles that we buy. But what you'll see is that the executives have paid themselves handsomely while trying to nickel and dime the very individuals who are manufacturing these vehicles in the first place. Now, the big three are Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors. We'll talk more about how the media is choosing to cover the potential strike in just a moment, but here's a refresher on the contract negotiations and where they stand today. Now, the UAW initially sought a 20% wage hike upon ratification and 4 annual 5% hikes, but has trimmed those hikes to around 36% in total, according to 2 sources who spoke to Reuters. The UAW wants a return of traditional pension payment plans and retiree health care for all UAW members. And they're doing this whole 2-tiered system thing that UPS fought back against and luckily won. And what I mean by that is workers hired before 2007 still have those benefits that they're currently fighting for, but those hired since, a majority of hourly workers do not have those benefits. The union also wants to see a return to cost of living adjustments to protect members from inflation. And Shawn Fain admits that the union's demands are pretty ambitious, but he says that they're justified. Why are they justified? Well, get a load of how much money these companies have made in profits. The companies might not be having it. They think that this is too much. But the UAW said Friday that GM and Ford are each proposing 10% increases in the hourly wage rate over the next 4 years in their most recent offers, while Stellantis is offering 14.5% raises. In comments to members on Friday, Fain called those offers insulting, given the automakers' sizable increases in profits in recent years. The big three have made a combined nearly $250 billion in profits, not just revenue, profits in North America over the past decade, including $21 billion in the first 6 months of 2023 alone. The company's shareholders and executives have been richly rewarded through stock buybacks and exorbitant salaries. Now, last year, the big three spent a whopping $9 billion on stock buybacks and dividends for their shareholders. And GM CEO Mary Barra was paid $29 million in 2022 alone. $29 million. And I'm sure stock options were mixed in that compensation package, but still $29 million. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, man, I like this new generation of labor leaders. I've been complaining about labor leaders sitting on their ass against giant companies for a long time. And finally, they're up and at him. And he got elected recently, and it was because a lot of the members were frustrated with labor leaders working with management and them getting nothing out of it. And so I love that revolt that happened within the unions, bringing us back to strong union leadership. So Shawn Fain, great job. So let me explain a couple of things here. Americans support this strike, but only by a little bit, 75%. 75, 3/4 of the country says go get them, workers, okay? You know why? Because they're workers. It makes a lot of sense, right? So here comes the propaganda machine called mainstream media. So corporate media is gonna get in there and do tons and tons of propaganda against the workers. And that's why, another reason why I love that Shawn Fain wouldn't take that crap from Jake Tapper. And at the end, Tapper's like, analyst, did you see that? He doesn't even think of his audience as people, the average guys who are working, et cetera. He's thinking, hey, stock market analyst. Did you see that? Why? Because the stock market's on his mind, because he's got a ton of money in the stock market. Okay, so what do they do in terms of propaganda? Tons of things. Lever had a great story about a story on NBC News that was just propaganda 101. It was a perfect example of it. The first thing they do, and you saw it in the CNN piece and you saw it in the NBC piece, is this could lead to higher prices for cars. You guys better worry. Remember, these workers are against you. They're gonna make prices higher for you. Hate the workers, okay? Now they don't say hate the workers, but that's exactly where they're leading you to go. But that's why Fain made such a great point. Honestly, I hadn't thought of that. Prices were terrible. We had to buy my parents a car. It was a disaster, up 30%, while the CEOs are increased their pay by 40% and not a peep out of media. Corporate media perfectly fine with it when prices were actually going up. This is speculative that they might go up at a later time, and they're already blaming the workers.
That's right, that's right. I want to actually give you specific examples of how the corporate media has handled this looming strike. So let's begin with NBC and show you how they decided to begin their coverage of the looming strike just last week. Let's watch.
It's looking more likely that more than 100,000 United Auto Workers could go on strike by the end of next week as contract negotiations have slowed. And that could mean car prices will soar even higher.
In Ogden, Utah, Jake Talbot at Young Ford warns a strike could cut inventory further, sending car prices higher.
If you're going to buy a car in the next few months, it's probably not a bad idea to do it now.
It's so consumer centered. Right, it's so consumer centered. But you know, consumers who overwhelmingly support the workers in this whole scenario could just keep driving the cars that they have and hold off on getting the new car that they've been eyeing.
But I want to tell you more tricks that were buried in that segment. Number one, why are they talking to a local car dealer? I mean, it makes sense that we're talking about cars, but wait, it's not a strike against the car dealers, it's a strike against the car companies. Oh, because talking to the CEO of GM is not gonna look sympathetic. It's a giant corporation and they made $250 billion in the last decade. So NBC knows that that doesn't look sympathetic, so they go to a small business owner in Utah. Is it gonna hurt your small business?
Okay, Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares had a total compensation package of $24.8 million in 2022. Which is 365 times that of the average employee, according to a US Securities and Exchange Commission filing. And by the way, I mean, he's making less than the CEO for GM. I want to just reiterate, $29 million in 2022 alone.
Never mentioned in the NBC story, the CNN story, none of the stories mentioned the gigantic pay of the CEOs. And in that NBC story, to be fair, they gave Fain, the union leader there, a whole 4 seconds. That was the big rebuttal from the union that they allowed. And then they go, what? We let him have a statement, right? Now more tricks. Then they say, and these workers at these plants that are unionized are making X amount more than the Tesla workers in the non-unionized plants. In other words, they're already making more than the other guys we crushed to oblivion. and they're still complaining? Like, did it never occur to you that maybe the guys at the Tesla plant should be getting paid more? Especially with $250 billion in profits floating around in the last decade? No, of course, that's never presented. But my absolute favorite, they said in that story, GM and all these companies, they were trying to make electric cars. But now if their prices go up because of these labor prices, they might not be able to make electric cars. So these workers are kind of hurting the planet.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Oh my God. So first of all, I mean, this is what, North Korean propagandists would be embarrassed. They'd be like, oh my God, why didn't we go more subtle like these guys? And put in every piece of lying marketing propaganda for giant corporations and bleed the American people dry. Why didn't we think of that here in North Korea? NBC and CNN have mastered art. I'm gonna say one last thing, demands. They always say the workers are making these demands of higher wages. Why can't we flip it and go, no, management is demanding lower wages while they take home record profits? That doesn't sound as good, does it? And that's why corporate media lies to you. Oh, I should note, a giant advertiser of NBC is GM. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.